Today I'm joined by Will Plummer, who's the CEO of Repayd. So, what Tripmatrix does, we focus on booking operations for travel companies, while Repayd provides the payment infrastructure behind those bookings. Um, so, to start off this whole webinar, let me start with with a quick question. Does anyone here actually know how Bluetooth headphones connect to your phone? You can write a message in the chat box. You're free to do that. But let me give you an answer. Me neither. Most of us do not know how Bluetooth connects to our phone, but we still own them. We purchase headphones. We are quite careless about the backstory. What matters to us is that they work. So we expect the technology to connect seamlessly without us thinking about what is happening behind the scenes. And this is exactly the same expectation people have when using travel technology. So when users interact with technology, so they don't want complexity. They expect things to work seamlessly. So they don't want to think about integrations, about systems or processes happening behind the scenes. And this expectation applies to travel companies as well, because travel companies want to focus on creating great travel experiences, not managing multiple systems and payment workflows. So the reality of travel operations is quite complex. Behind a single booking, there can be multiple suppliers like hotels, transport providers, activities, you name it. There are often different payment stages, such as deposits, final payments, refunds. And there may be different currencies involved. And then we have cancellations, payment reminders, and accounting processes. So travel companies are not just selling trips, they're managing complex operational and financial workflows. So, aside from true love, right, everything has a price tag. So, together, we help our client create his or your client actually to create his priceless memories. However, under some terms and conditions. So our client, it's a she sees the price tag. However, she does not see the specifications of your headaches. And she should not. It needs to be flawless, just like your operations. So when you think about electricity, it just works. You don't think about power plants, you don't think about the grid or the transformers. Lights on, lights off. So infrastructure should be invisible. Although we have to recognize that travel companies often manage payment tracking across bookings, manual reconciliation, payment reminders, invoicing challenges, and even accounting integrations, for example, QuickBooks. So the result is manual processes and operational complexity. However, all of this creates big operational challenges. Teams often need to manually track payments across multiple bookings. So they send reminders, they reconcile payments, and they manage invoicing through different accounting tools. When booking systems and payment systems are not connected, a lot of work becomes manual, which leads to inefficiencies, errors, and operational chaos. So let's now look at how this works in practice. So this is where booking management and payment infrastructure come together, because Tripmatrix focuses on the operational side of bookings, Repayd, on the other side, they provide the payment infrastructure behind those bookings. So together, they enable travel companies to manage both operations and payments in a connected way. So let's now look at Tripmatrix. From the operational perspective, Tripmatrix helps travel companies manage the entire booking lifecycle. This includes managing complex itineraries with multiple suppliers and travelers, handling different payment scenarios such as deposits, such as final payments, then automating payment reminders for each payment term, automating payment confirmations to supplier, to an agent, to customer, automating voucher generation and distribution, and creating invoices and automating accounting if you have accounting tools such as, for example, QuickBooks. And most importantly, keeping booking and payment information visible and organized in one place. Payments become part of the booking workflow rather than a separate operational task. So this is how the process looks. If you look at the slide, first we have the strip request, which is created either manually by an agent or automatically through your Tripmatrix powered website. Okay, so the agent then builds the itinerary, he defines the payment and cancellation terms, and he sends an offer in just a few clicks. The client receives an email with a link to their traveler portal. It's a dedicated space where they can review the offer, request changes, and proceed with booking, creating a fully connected process between the traveler and the travel company with clear visibility for clients and complete professional oversight for agents at every stage. Okay, this is a brief description of how Tripmatrix process looks. Now, for example, when a customer pays for a trip, the payment can be automatically split. Traveler makes a payment, full amount or a single installment, and then the card payment is processed via Repayd. Okay, will side. So the platform commission can be transferred immediately, but the remaining amount, the payment minus platform commission fee, is held in the travel company's Repayd account. So the company can then transfer these funds to their bank account. So payment is very simple and easy to track, and you get the real-time alerts in application and via email. So this eliminates what? Invoicing transactional fee, reduces operational work, and it increases transparency. So now I would like to hand over the stage to Will Plummer from Repayd to share his perspective on payment infrastructure in the traveler ecosystem. Will, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you to the Tripmatrix team for having me. Particularly like the very flattering AI-generated image. Not wearing the cape today, but I'm obviously wearing the branded top, which I often wear. So it's a similar kind of uniform. So yeah, as Anna was saying, what Repayd does is we provide a financially protected payment infrastructure for travel businesses. And what that means is we're sat as merchant of record. Now that's a slight nuance, but it allows us to do a lot of different things with travel payments. Firstly, thanks, it is a nice costume. Firstly, it allows us to route the payment wherever the customer is. So we have offices in 6 jurisdictions around the world. So we can then route a card transaction or a local payment in to where it's the most cost effective to process those payments. When they come into our infrastructure, we're automatically financially protecting them. So we're making sure the money is safe. And what we're giving to the customer is a guarantee that in the event of a failure of a travel provider or any suppliers in that booking, we're protecting them. And that just automatically generates some consumer confidence. And then once it's in the infrastructure, you can also do a lot of things with it. As Anna was saying, you can split that payment, and it could just be the platform fee, but it also can be payout to suppliers. That can all be all automatically generated using the most cost-effective and local payment methods out to your suppliers. So it could be a local bank transfer, it could be a virtual credit card payout, whatever it needs for your operation. And every part of that is tracked and reported on. So you have that full audit trail and you can automate the whole process. So rather than you having staff members that are having to go in and do that, we can generate that all through API, all through our platform, and take care of that. Because the payment side of things becomes increasingly important, as Anna was saying, and the whole point of this presentation in 2026. And you might say, well, I'm the payments guy. Of course, I'm going to say that. But payments is becoming so intrinsically linked to bookings and the choices that customers make. So if you're not showing a customer's currency at checkout, you automatically lose 10% of potential business. If you're not showing payment types that they want to pay in, again, you're losing that conversion rate on your bookings. And the same thing goes forwards in terms of supplier payments. Some suppliers will accept virtual cards, some won't. Some don't want bank transfers because of reconciliation. And so it's important that you understand what that looks like for your operation and how that can be pieced together. And what we talk about a lot, and certainly recently, is this payment journey, this whole connected ecosystem for your traveler in terms of you being able to convert that booking, but you being able to efficiently utilize the payment and the funds within that payment. So you can minimize all the risks and all the leakage within your operation, be that foreign exchange leakage, be that payout leakage in terms of the payouts that you have to make. It's important that you understand that ecosystem, you understand that connectivity, and that you can improve on that and make that as efficient as possible. Because unfortunately, while humor is incredibly important, that is often where leakage happens and where we can spend as businesses a lot of time and effort in getting all of these tasks taken care of. So in a nutshell, that's why, for me, payments sit as a really important part of your operation in terms of efficiency, in terms of cost control, but also that next layer up in terms of looking at that conversion rate, in terms of looking and securing that booking that otherwise you might lose to your competitors. And that is only going to be enhanced as AI becomes more prevalent. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of agentic commerce. That whole kind of automated process becomes even more important. And if you don't start thinking about it in your operation and where all those little potential leakages are, that's where it can cost your businesses a lot of money. You've taken down the flattering photo. I'm very disappointed.
Well, thank you so much, Will. Now we're going to move into discussion and see how booking operations and payment infrastructure can actually come together to support what we call a modern travel business. Okay, so I have some questions down here. I mean, many travel companies still process multiple payments for different services within one trip. Well, what does a one payment flow for a travel booking actually look like in practice?
The problem is
Is it a
it's not
tough
that
question?
it's
I don't
not
think
that
so.
simple. Yeah, it depends what vertical of travel, and there's such a diversity between a tour operator, an inbound operator, an airline, a
Exactly. I
cruise
mean,
operator.
overall, in
So,
general, I mean,
but
everybody's,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So first and foremost, you've got to understand what you're selling and the market you are selling to. So if you're selling into a particular market, does that market accept card payments? Does that market accept alternative forms of payment? Because that will improve your connectivity and your ability to convert them, as I say. So money comes in, and the way that we work is money comes into a secure client-only control account. It's controlled by independent trustees, and that money is completely ring-fenced and protected. But what that enables you to do is basically then route that money within a particular booking to the right places it needs to be in the right conversion rate. So if you are a business that deals in South African rand, but you're selling to a US market and potentially you have US dollar suppliers as well, what
Okay.
you can and what you should be looking at doing is while you price in rand and you want to receive that rand, you can convert to the customer and accept that payment in US dollars. But you can split off the US dollars you want to retain for that US dollar supplier payment while preserving the rate on your South African rand rather than doing a double rate. So you can get that flow nicely audited, nicely controlled, nicely compartmentalized for your business.
Okay. Okay. Well, that sounds good. I'm sure
It,
there's some
it
problems.
is good. It is incredibly good.
If you
It
say
does
so.
take some work and some consideration.
Okay, got it. Um, Travel bookings often involve multiple suppliers, such as,
Yep.
for example, hotels, activity providers, transport companies. And what are the challenges that travel companies face when paying these suppliers? And how can payment infrastructure simplify this process?
So I think one of the things that is often overlooked when paying suppliers is actually what does a supplier want to receive? So virtual card payments have become, very popular, especially when paying airlines or paying hotels. Not least because they earn rebates to the company that's actually paying, and also you get that automatic audit trail. But a lot of suppliers won't accept those. They come at a high cost. So just forcing that because you think it's going to add 1% to your top line, sorry, isn't necessarily the best course of action. Equally, paying by a Swift or a wire transfer, again, can add a lot of costs, can add a lot of delay to your business because you don't know when you send that money and it might cost you 10, 25, $50 with your bank, that actually there are a couple of legs that happen. So there's what's called an intermediary bank in the middle, which very kindly takes a little bit of money. And there's normally your bank receiving a Swift or a wire will often take a bit of money as well. So there's not that sort of clarity over funds. So you send $1,000 and your supplier might not receive $1,000. They might receive $950. So what you've got to do is you've got to map all of this out. And one of the bits of advice I always give people is understand firstly where your money's coming from, but where it's going to. And there are lots of solutions out there. Obviously, I'm here to promote Repayd, and it's something that we do. But there are lots of solutions out there where, firstly, you can control that foreign exchange, and it's important to lock that in when you can, as early as you can, so you've got no risk or no potential losses at that point. But also then look at how you're paying out to your supplier and whether they're happy with that. I've seen a lot of businesses who've actually benefited financially from changing how they pay their suppliers. Their suppliers been far more willing to work with a particular payment method versus another one. Now, if they accept virtual card, that's probably great for you in terms of that audit trail and that commission. But what's the alternative? Can you pay out through local bank transfers? So a bit like SEPA works within Europe, or faster payments in the UK, or ACH in the US. Is that something you can take advantage of? And you don't need to necessarily be based in that country to benefit from that payment solution. So one of the things that we do at Repayd is connect you into those domestic payout channels. Now, they're not everywhere. They are currency restrictive as well, but you've got to really plan that out to make the most, and as I say, to prevent that leakage within your business.
Sure. So what you're actually telling us, if we simplify your words, like think long term, not short term, and then you got to adapt a little bit to your supplier as well. When we talk about payment infrastructure, where do you think companies should start when planning their payment infrastructure?
So it's a horrible cliche, and I used it before, but with a blank piece of paper. Genuinely, I think too often we get kind of bogged down with operations. And look, I do completely appreciate, and many, many years ago, I used to run a DMC. you get too bogged down with selling your trips and your tours. And that is absolutely, as you said at the top, Anna, that is absolutely how you make money. That is your passion. That's how you got into travel. But in terms of improving that efficiency, you've actually got to look at what your operation is and how payments flow within that. So let's say, for instance, you are a DMC. Let's use the South African example again. So you're potentially paying local hotels. You're potentially paying ground handlers. Maybe you've got some internal flights in there. What does that look like? Is that all South African rand based? Those suppliers, how do they want to be paid? And also, what's the security of that payment? So paying by virtual card gives you that chargeback protection. Wire transfers gives you the ability to track the payment the whole way through. Local payments don't have that tracking, they don't have that protection, but they have that faster delivery and cheaper cost. So you've got to find what works for your business and what suits your business. And then ultimately, what you want to do once you've mapped out that infrastructure is look at partners who can deliver that for you in the most automated way. Because if you don't do that, and if you don't connect that, then what ultimately happens is you've got invoice in, manual payment out. So you've got someone going into a bank account or into a payment system and actually typing in those figures. And that's unfortunately where human error comes in. But that's also where there's a lot of human cost. There's a lot of, it's costing businesses a lot of time to analyze and to do that. And my personal view is that you can put people to better use within your operation. You can improve that efficiency, and you can get them in just providing oversight to all of that, because you can automate all of these things through a connected infrastructure. But it comes from mapping it out and starting with my blank piece of paper.
So you actually replied to my next question. So I'm going to move on to the third question.
Okay.
And I'm just going back to something you spoke about earlier, and it's quite interesting, but I saw some people came in just recently after you talked about it. How big of an impact do payment types and currency options have on customer conversion and supplier acceptance? I really like what you spoke about this. So if you can just kind of briefly
Yeah, so I think the statistic on currency is if you're able to offer to your consumers the ability to pay in their own currency, there is on average a 10% uplift in conversion rate. So people will often go out looking for their own currency because they understand the value of it. No disrespect to any Americans that might be on here, but Americans are a classic example. They only want to pay in US dollars. They only recognize US dollars. That's how they think about things. And they typically turn off if they don't see US dollar as a pricing option on that. It's similar. It's not quite as dramatic with payment types. It depends where you are in the world. A lot of European customers, North American customers, card payments are the predominant paying solution to them. But then you get into little sort of more nuanced markets. So you get into the Dutch market, where Ideal has been very big, and Germany, where Sofort has been very big. Now they've been replaced by, or they are being replaced by, a solution called Wero, which is basically a bank-to-bank solution. But something like 50% of the German market don't pay e-commerce transactions by bank. So if you're targeting that market and you're only offering card payments, you risk ostracizing a lot of that market. So again, back to my blank piece of paper, which was on the supplier side, where are your marketing efforts and where are your target audiences on the sales side of things? Because again, think about what you could offer. And it's not a complex process. Once you've identified that a large part of your business comes from Germany or the Netherlands, as an example, there are plenty of suppliers that can support you in turning on Wero, and then you've opened that up. Equally, you get into China or the Chinese market, you're talking Alipay, WeChat Pay, that you need those to make that conversion. The one caveat I would make is don't just turn these payment types on, or don't just offer this currency and expect that customers from those regions will suddenly start flooding in. It's got to be as part of what you're doing as a business. You've got to market obviously to those regions. You've got to look at things like translations. That these are all things out of my sort of
Exactly. Yeah.
remit, but certainly the currency and the payment type becomes an important part of that strategy as you build into different regions. And if you're already in those regions, to make sure you get those conversions.
Exactly. As you already briefly you touched a little bit of other business segments. So now let's go back to Tripmatrix and how important it is, Will, to have seamless connectivity between the travel booking company and the payment processing company such as yours.
Yeah, 100%. So, we're very happy with our, delighted to be partnering with Tripmatrix. For us, and going back to what I said before, it's all about this payment journey. And I look at it from a payment journey, but we're also looking at it from a customer journey and a customer experience. So you need to have that integration of every part of that journey. It's no good in 2026 if that's bit is done on a piece of paper and a booking is recorded on an Excel, and then you try and, you know, spin up some kind of payment through email or something. That is not a connected journey. Yes, it can work. I'm not saying that it can't work, but to improve your efficiency, you need that connected solution. So you need the booking in there that links to the payment, whether that payment is then sent out by a secure payment link. And then you need the reconciliation of that coming back into Tripmatrix, then connecting into your QuickBooks. Whatever you're operating on, you need all of that approach so that you hopefully can be as hands off as possible in your business. And back to the point, you can spend your time selling your wonderful trips and tours to customers around the world, and let the technology do the heavy lifting.
Exactly. That's what technology is for. It's not for us to
100%.
and spend time on. It's there to work, just like I said before, lights on, lights off. That's it. We don't want to think about it. Now, I would love to hear some questions from the audience. I think Will and I spoke enough, so please feel free to ask questions in chat box, or just unmute yourself, or somebody needs
And
to.
just to preempt it, I'm not putting the outfit on now. I'm not putting the cape
No.
on now. So do not ask that question.
But look, I mean, it's a nice picture. Come on.
It's a nice picture.
Yeah, GPT did a good job. Yeah.
What? You saying that's not a photo?
Nice.
I think one thing, while people are just thinking of some questions, Anna, especially right now with all of the trouble in the Middle East, especially, but also from tomorrow. Um, I don't know if many people have heard of VAMP, which is the Visa Requiring Monitoring Program. That changes its threshold. Risk and chargebacks becomes an important consideration, an important thought to all of this, because I know probably a lot of operators worry about chargebacks. They are constantly told by their banks that travel is high risk, and here is a rolling reserve, here's a fixed deposit they've got to give. They get absolutely freaked out when they get a chargeback, because they've poured their love and attention into this tour, and then the customer has charged back. Again, I'd say, firstly, don't panic about these things, but data becomes really important. So one of the things for, firstly, managing your onboarding with a payment solution, and then also managing chargebacks and understanding your risk, is having that data. And that's where, again, back to your point about a connected solution, that becomes really important. It's having that data. So Mr. Plumber paid $500. What was that for? And then to be able to go back and go, well, look, we've got all of this data through Tripmatrix. We know that that was reference 1, 2, 3, 4 for this wonderful trip to South Africa, whatever it may be. You can then far more easily represent your chargeback if that ever comes up. And we have a lot of experience this. We fully manage all of our chargeback process for our customers within our system. But also it helps you work with banks. It helps you work on those facilities. And I think too often people hear travel is bad, travel is high risk, travel has long lead-in times, travel doesn't have this, that, and the other. If you have that data, you can be very confident in what you're doing, and I would encourage companies to do that and to work with the likes of ourselves, to work with Tripmatrix, because we can support you in having that data and having that identity as we take things forwards. So no one's coming out with any questions, so I'm going to keep talking if you don't ask something else, guys.
Yeah, I would love to hear from our audience about how they handle chargebacks, though. Um, I mean, those that do not use Repayd or Tripmatrix yet. I mean, how do you guys handle this? What are your challenges? What do you do when you have situations where you need to take care of chargebacks? And don't be shy, just free yourself. It's just how many of us? No?
You can type it if you don't want to speak.
Yeah, that's why we have this chat box.
No one else has got a question. I'm here to
I think we
honestly.
clarified everything. I mean, we gave all the
No,
answers.
I don't think so. People have got that thing in their business where they just want to know the answer to, in terms of payments or in terms of booking systems, and they're worried to ask. Come on.
Yeah. I mean, we all have different situations at
Yep.
work in our businesses that sometimes people can't even think of what bothers them, but it bothers them at the same time. So, okay, there is
Okay.
something going on in the chat box.
Okay, Denver, and does that work for you? If that works for your business, so Denver's put that he uses bank transfers and some Western Union. If that works for your operation, fantastic. I'd say make sure as far as possible you can connect that into a reservation platform or whatever you're using. So hopefully that doesn't become a manual reconciliation for your team. Um, but if it works for your business, and look, we're not saying switch, throw everything up in the air. But all I'm trying to encourage people to do is to think about their business, and just if you can, especially as owner operators, if you can step back and just think about the flow of money, think about the touch points of that flow of money. So that bank transfer, how many people are getting their hands, how many banks are getting their hands on any kind of money along the way? How many fees are being deducted before it ultimately gets to you? And then when it gets to you, what does that look like in terms of reconciliation within your system? Can you easily marry that into your system to record a booking has been paid? And then from there, what does the flow of funds out to a supplier look like? Again, how is that managed? How can you keep a clean audit trail of that? How is currency handling all of that? And if you've got it and it works, as I say, this isn't rip it up and start again. This is just, can you think about all the bits where potentially you're leaking a little bit of money? And if you lose a dollar sort of three, four, five times in a single booking, that is money that could be in your pocket. And that's where payments, that's where this whole infrastructure and connected infrastructure becomes so important, because it improves that efficiency. And perhaps it now only costs you $1 rather than costing you $5. So now you've got $4 in your pocket. So that's the point I'm trying to get across on this, is just make sure you look at your operation.
Thank you, Will. Um, let's go back to the payment reconciliation.
Yep.
My another question for audience this time, and I want to hear what people think. How can travel companies actually simplify this payment reconciliation? How do you see it? What do you see it can be done to simplify the whole thing? I'm asking people to be creative now, so to get some ideas, give us some thoughts on this one.
Who's going to say AI?
Well, AI is in everything. I mean,
Yeah.
whatever
Come
you,
on, guys. You don't want to
but
make
it's
me do all the
not
work
that
and talk all
reliable in
night.
everything. Come on, we
No.
gotta you gotta have some experience in business to, to come up with all the ideas. And I mean, not to say that AI is not good, but sometimes you know, it's just a tool. So you gotta use it wisely.
Yeah. I wouldn't trust it with my payments data at the moment. I certainly wouldn't trust it with any customer data. It needs to be checked and verified all the time.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly. I agree. So no
we,
questions. I can't believe that we don't have questions in the chat box. I was so sure everybody's gonna have a question. But it seems to me that, well, two of us, but
we,
especially you,
we've
you
answered
with your
we've answered everything.
yeah, we answered everything. If you guys don't feel like asking questions, you can feel free to send us an email, send us a
Yeah.
message. We're going to be available after the webinar as well. Um, so for now, I would like to just go over some of the key takeaways we went over. And to summarize, that travel payments are not just the final step of the booking. They're the core operational component. So booking systems and payment infrastructure, they must work together to create a seamless workflow. So when they do, travel companies can reduce manual work, improve visibility, and simplify operations. With this said, I think this is the end of our webinar
We're
for
back.
yeah. And I would love to thank you, everyone, for joining us today. It was my pleasure. I'm sure it was Will's as well. Thank you, Will, again for the great discussion, for the insights. You made me think about some things and that I'm going to reflect upon later. But all of us, we hope that you found this session useful, and we look forward to staying in touch. So please feel free to contact us for more information or to schedule a demo. I mean, I think that my colleague was sending the link with the demo link. Yeah. So just let us know. Send us an email. Send us a message. I mean, we'll be glad to answer, and we'll be glad to continue our conversation. Thank you
Yeah,
once
and
again.
can I just say from our side, Anna, sorry to interrupt, please do get in contact with either Tripmatrix or ourselves. For us, it's not about selling to you. It's about making sure you have the right solution and working with you on that. And if you have the right solution, we're always the first to say we can't improve on this. But I'd much rather have the conversation and for people to come with their problems and say, "What do you think of this?" And please don't feel that we're just going to, you know, ram some pricing down and hope to convert you as a customer. That's not how we work. I hope what we've said has been interesting to everyone. And again, thank you to Anna and Trip Matrix. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you once again, and have a nice day, everyone. Thank you. Bye
Take
bye.
care. Thanks.